thought I made you strong, but you're as pathetic as you ever were, little sister.
This is my kingdom.
Did you say something?
So let's talk The Huntsman, Winter's War, the sequel and prequel to the Snow White and the Huntsman movie of some years back. Now, when I saw this film, I thought it was purely going to be a prequel, but it isn't. The prequel section at the beginning of the film is only about 15 minutes. The remainder of the film is actually a sequel to the Snow White movie. Now, this one is directed by Cedric Nicolas-Troyan and obviously stars pretty much an all-star cast here. You've got Chris Hemsworth, Jessica Chastain, Charlize Theron, Emily Blunt, you know, an all-star cast along with a few other kind of familiar faces you'll recognise here. So basically, this has some very clear influences, if you ask me. If you have seen the Disney movie Frozen, about two sisters, one of which has ice powers, that's in this movie. And I think other thing it's really influenced by is Game of Thrones, especially I would say in the first half of this film. Some of the kind of the beats that they have, this kind of threat coming from the north, from the frozen north, and some of the kind of the way the dialogue is and the kind of the action stuff so reminds me of Game of Thrones. It kind of gets a little bit more fantasy as the kind of the film goes on. And the story here, basically, like I said, is both a prequel and a sequel. You essentially have Charlize Theron's kind of little sister, who is pretty much another evil witch, but she has ice powers, and she has sort of conquered the north, and she is essentially responsible for the origin of the Huntsman, and he has a kind of like a female counterpart, which was his ends up being his wife. And they kind of go on an adventure. So they are all after the mirror, obviously, which features in the first film. And we have the good guys trying to find the mirror, and we have the bad guys trying to find the mirror, and obviously the expected climax at the end. That's all I'm going to kind of tell you about the plot, to be honest. So let's talk about the positives and negatives of The Huntsman: A Winter's War. I have to say, I did quite like this film. Though I have some issues with it. I have seen people really praise Jessica Chastain and say she's the best thing in it. I will actually disagree. I didn't like her character, and I didn't feel chemistry with Chris Hemsworth was particularly good. I felt like she was kind of shoehorned into this film. Before she comes into the role, I mean, you see her at the beginning, but she'll come in kind of later on in the film. That's the portion to me that reminds me of Game of Thrones, before she shows up, basically. And when she shows up, I felt that it kind of got a little bit more dumb, basically, this film movie, because of that. And I wasn't just feeling the kind of the chemistry between the two of them, to be honest. And it's very much a sentiment thing. It's love conquers all and all of that. You'll hear that said a few times throughout the movie. So I didn't like that. The other criticism I will have, and this is, I didn't actually do a review on the channel, I don't think, with Snow White and the Huntsman. One of the criticisms I had with that is I thought the Huntsman was pretty much peripheral in his own film. Now, if you were to take him out of the story, it plays out pretty much the same in both the first film and the second one, to a point. There's a couple of things obviously he does, but to be honest with you, very little changes if you were to take the Huntsman character out of both Snow White and the Huntsman Winter's War. It would pretty much end up in the same place if you took that character out. So he just seems so peripheral to me. And that's kind of one of the main criticisms I have with this, the kind of the writing of this film. It just doesn't, he seems such an insignificant character to the grand scheme of things. And when we have these kind of the climaxes at the end with kind of Charlize Theron's character and Emily Blunt's character, he seems more of like an annoying kind of side character rather than the kind of the actual protagonist in the conflict, so to speak. Now, on the positives, I actually kind of really liked the aesthetics here, the kind of the fantasy world. It's very much in tune with the kind of the first film, which I actually didn't mind. I kind of felt like it got kind of a bit shafted, a bit unfairly, to be honest with you. But I actually can't like the aesthetics of this film. I thought Emily Blunt made quite an interesting villain, clearly influenced by Elsa from obviously the Frozen. She even kind of looks the same, to be honest with you. But she kind of made somewhat of an interesting, an interesting villain with some interesting motivations. There is a twist in this film that you can kind of see coming a mile off. Charlize Theron is not in this film loads. If you're going purely to see Charlize Theron, she's not in it anywhere near that she was in it in the first film. She is, she has a strong presence in it, specifically towards the end of the film. But to be honest with you, she's not in it a whole lot. And then you have some comedy characters. Basically, the dwarves. They were kind of a mixed bag to me. I did find some of the lines funny, but I didn't really understand why they were there. They seem kind of peripheral. I don't really understand the reasons for them sort of tagging along, basically. So overall, I actually kind of quite like this film to a point, though I did feel it had some unnecessary elements and maybe could have had a bit of a better script, if you ask me. Some of the action's quite cool. I like some of the kind of the creature designs and things like that, and the kind of the action's all kind of quite good. If a little bit too kind of like choreographed in certain areas, but it's all quite kind of fun. I would have liked it to have gone more of the kind of the Game of Thrones style route that we kind of see at the beginning of the film, but I guess that's maybe a little darker than kind of it wants to go for. It wants to kind of tap into this more of the Frozen type of audience and kind of have this more of a kind of a younger feel to it. But it does have elements of a darker touch here and there. But overall, it was okay. I think it's probably worth seeing if you're a fantasy film fan. I'm going to give this movie a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.